Well, good afternoon, everybody. Nick Spoden here with Lagos. Excited to share a ton today around Soltellus. We are going to give it just a couple minutes here. I'll let a couple more people filter in. Got an incredible audience by the looks of things already. So, sincerely appreciate everybody who has joined us already and really excited to get into things with you guys. So for those that are here, just because we want to get a little bit more activity going here, we're about to jump into our third year at this point with Soltellus. Would love to understand where y'all are coming in at. Drop a note in the chat box as far as a state or even a location. Obviously, that's only going to help us with being able to kind of share or highlight things in your backyard, or even be able to talk a little bit into kind of how we see it specifically playing into your world. So. Um, Keep with us, guys. The chat's meant to be there not only for the Q and A's, but for fun stuff like this too. So appreciate you guys coming from all over. Well, hey, there we go. We're at the 2 minutes after mark, so let's jump right into it. A lot to go over today. Trying to keep it as tight as we can, but there's just a lot here that we want to be able to showcase, share, kind of tell our story, and again, hopefully help bring you successes as we head into the 2026 season. So again, I mentioned myself, Nick Spoden here, Senior Director of Agronomy. We've got a great team with us today. I'm going to get into them in a minute, but what we're here to talk about again is really the proof over promise. So tell us, how does it deliver? What have we been seeing? And it's been quite fun when we look at the past couple of years now since our commercial launch. So let's jump right into it, you guys. I know we've got a couple coming up here that I'm going to pass the buck right away over to my colleague Niles. But before I do, let me introduce the team. Again, myself, Nicholas Spoden. I've been with the company now for a little over 2.5 years, based out east in Massachusetts, originally Minnesota. We cover a lot of ground here as a group, but we're really looking forward to, again, kind of taking this to a whole new level. So please, again, by all means, chat with us. Let us know how you're doing, where you're from, and also we've got Niles McGuire with us. Niles has been with us now a little bit over a year and a half himself. Our senior retail sales manager, based just south of Dayton there in Ohio. Niles obviously having the farm experience too is massive in how we've been able to kind of understand this in different geographies, different soils, crops, all across the board. Similarly, we've got Katie Patterson, who is our senior inside sales manager. Katie, just like Niles, I think they actually started dang close to a week or two apart. Both been here for over a year and a half, have seen it now a couple of years over, which is, only helping us really understand this better and again, find ways to bring value to the farm gate. Definitely can't leave this one off. I mean, this is the guy that's going to be bringing all the magic today. Nick Vandervoort, our head of technical agronomy here. Nick's been with us now a little bit over a year, but his experience beyond is just phenomenal. Learned so much from him. I know myself, and boy, it's a great group that we've got here. Very diverse, as well as a ton of knowledge. So again, please ask away, and we'll get into some Q&A at the end. But in the meantime, I mentioned passing it off here, so I'm going to let Niles get into the product itself because, in my opinion, nobody explains it better.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Nick, for the introduction. Just a really quick overview again of, and everybody, please feel free to go look up our previous webinars. We will go a little bit more in depth on this, but we just like to do a quick overview. Once again, we are polyaspartate. What that means is we take that individual aspartic acid that you see in the center there, and then we essentially manufacture that further into this polymer that gives us a CEC of 100 and a strong negative charge. Go ahead and pop into the next slide. But what that gives us is this multifunctional polymer that gives us kind of two-step phase. First off, chelation of nutrients and that nutrient recycling and helping free up phosphorus and make other nutrients available, also holding them where we want. That's kind of the first phase with that 45-day half-life. We're in that soil profile, and we're doing things like freeing anywhere from 25 to 50 pounds of phosphorus, depending on that soil profile and that in the soil types and CECs and things like that, as well as holding and helping drive potassium and nitrogen into that crop and leaf tissues, and helping build a healthier, more robust crop through the chelation and the nutrients. The second phase, because we're a strong carbon source, each one of those individual molecules being a 4 parts carbon and 1 part nitrogen, and helping be that strong carbon source as we break down, being that multifunctional biodegradable polymer. When that polymer starts to break down, it's actually releasing that carbon source and food source to the microbial population in that soil or in that leaf tissue plant. Something else we would like to kind of really talk about or elevate per se is the fact we also have about 4%, 4 to 5% free floating aspartic acid that's not been polymerized in the product as well, kind of as a fast acting biostimulant in that amino acid that is readily available right away. So you have that chelation and that long lasting polyaspartic along with the fast acting microbiome stimulation of the aspartic acid, kind of mixed together. And there's so many benefits to being a quick start to that to the microbiome and some of that biostimulation that we can get over time with our product, whether that's mixed with live biologicals or mixed with our fertilizers and the fertility, or on with our herbicide and foliar passes. And you guys are about to see some of the trials results that we've been seeing from that. But yeah, so that's just the quick overview again of what we're seeing. We're seeing the greater nutrient cycling, the soil health benefits, and the plant growth benefits through the microbial stimulation and that chelation. And so that's really a lot of fun having a two-punch product.
That's great, Niles. Yeah, and before we, move it on to Nick and get into just the application side, the crops. I mean, there's a ton I feel like that I could hit on there that you just laid out, but one specifically that I really want to, revisit or call out, 25 to 50 pounds of pea. I mean, that's wild, right? That number alone is fun, but how exactly do we get there? Like, what makes us confidence in that? You mentioned the chelation. And obviously, where does that put your confidence as a grower heading into the 26 season, knowing prices are where they're at?
Yeah. So essentially how that's happening is when we're putting in that negatively charged polymer into that soil, what's happening is anything that is positively charged, like calcium, magnesium, iron, anything that's going to want to tie that phosphorus up is going to be more attracted to the Soltellus molecule than it will the phosphorus itself or other nutrients for that matter, right? So depending on the pH of your soil or the soil type specifically is going to give us that kind of that range of how much phosphorus we're putting out there. But with how many individual polymers are going out in that 1 or 2 quart rate, when you're going out there, whether it's a split application, the 2 quart rate, 4 rate, whether you're split applying that or doing all of that in one shot, there's a ton of activation sites that are going out there that are going to help free up nutrients in our soil and drive that microbial activity.
Awesome. Yeah, that's awesome stuff. I mean, that's something that we really want people thinking of, especially heading into this year, right? With those prices being up as high as they are. We know we've got a ton of FOS in the bank, right? So it's really a matter at this point of how do we make it soluble, free it up, and that's something that I think we've seen as a group as a big, strong point here.
Yeah. And not just phosphorus, so many other nutrients that we're making available too. Go ahead and
That's perfect, buddy. Thank you very much. Yeah, let's keep her going. I mean, I feel like that was a great little intro into it. So now it's, meat, right? What have we been seeing? This is all encompassing, and I'm not going to go any further. I'm going to tap Nick Vandervoort because, like I said, he's the expert here in the group. So, Nick, why don't you come on in and give us a breakdown?
Awesome. Thanks. First off, to everybody that's on the webinar, welcome. This is data centric. So from here on out, we're going to go kind of around the country, look at different crops and how the product is performing. This is as of 7/26 of last year, a kind of a trial map of the crops and the states and the number of trials we're doing in each one. The takeaway here is that we greatly expanded our focus as far as number of trials last year and also the crops that we are doing research in. We expanded into specialty crops. We'll talk about that towards the end, but also we've added several other row crops. Now, I want to make a little shameless plug here to our partners. If you are holding any data, with you or your farmer partners that you have not turned into us, please send that in so we can add it to our database. More is always better when it comes to data. So I'm gonna break this down now, moving into different crops. But again, the takeaway here is it's not just U.S. It's expansion within the country, but we're doing work up in Canada. We're doing work as far away as Vietnam. And there's other things on the horizon, other countries that we're probably going to expand into as we move forward as well. So a lot going on. Let's get started with this. As the next one, please. As the song goes, from way back in the day, we got a long way to go, short time to get there. Let's hammer down. So I'm going to start with corn. Corn's kind of king. We started our research back in 23 on corn, and that is the crop that we have the longest exposure with the product on. So we have the largest database. So I'm going to start with this because this is really important. So I think everybody probably understands and knows Beck's seed company, based out in Indiana, but they have a footprint across a lot of the Corn Belt. They have an agronomy team that every year does a number of locations of replicated grower strip trials called Performance Farm Research, PFR. And there's a cross section of products that they test every year, and they actually test it for a period of 3 years to prove efficacy and ROI. And we've been in that for 2 years now. And what we've done here is we've applied Soltellus 2 quarts per acre at planting in a 2 by 2 by 2 band. And then you'll notice at the bottom here, there's 5 different locations that they do these trial work in. The lighter green is 2024 results. The 2025 results are the darker green bars. So the bottom line here is that application has shown a 100% win rate. In other words, it has generated a positive yield response of up to 9.7 bushel per acre over untreated. And it's done that 2 completely different types of seasons in a row. The takeaway here on these grower strip trials is if we do 3 years of this and we have the same type of results, or I think we could maybe miss 1 or 2, but if we're showing a trend towards positive yield and ROI, we become what's called Beck's PFR proven. So that is their third-party validation independently of our product, and then they will recommend that to their grower base. And Beck's has a significant grower base and distribution network in seed. So we're really hoping that our performance continues here, and we'll get that PFR proven status as we go into the 2027 season. Let's continue on.
That's great stuff, Nick. Yeah, and I mean the 100% win rate right across 5 locations is massive. That speaks to that consistency, right? That's great.
Absolutely. Okay, I think I need to erase those lines, correct, Nick? So that's the you told me yesterday how to do that, and I don't remember.
You're all right. Let's keep her going. Everybody can look through her in the meantime.
All right, gotcha. Okay, so if you're familiar with our ebook, which came out about this time last year, we had a version of this chart in the ebook. What this is a piano chart of all of the trials that we have had reported to us with scientific-based data, okay, replicated data that we can add into our database. Each one of these bars is a trial. The trial IDs are at the bottom, starting with the state they're in, and then this is kind of a protocol identifier. The bottom line here is the height of these bars indicates the difference of the Soltellus treatment versus untreated, okay? And the vast majority of these are positive, so that's a yield advantage. There's a few that are negative. We didn't win them all, okay? We'll address that here in just a second. But over 2 years with this update, or 3 years now, we have 48 trials. The win rate on corn is 89.6, almost 90%, with an overall yield average across all trials here of 6.4 bushels per acre. Quickly about the treatments. Okay, this goes across all kinds of applications. There's a lot of these that are in furrow or 2x2. There's some of these that are foliar, either with herbicide, somewhat with sidedress, some with fungicide. Okay, so it's 2 quarts in furrow, or it's a split. Some up front, like a quart up front, followed by a quart foliarly. So it's all the types of data that we have generated to date. So 3 different types of years. We have maintained a 90% win rate across really all 3 of those seasons, which is really phenomenal. And 6.4 bushels per acre really leads us to the positive ROI. So that break-even line is basically the cost, the yield you would have to get to pay for 2 quarts of Soltellus. Quickly on the losses. Why did we lose? Okay, there's nothing about this product that should cause any kind of crop response or set any kind of crop back. So my greatest explanation of those losses, agronomically, nutritionally, there's something else going on that accounted for that. There's nothing about the product that should ever set a crop back. Okay, so very high win rate 3 years in a row on corn. Next, please. Okay, can't forget soybeans. So we started soybean research a year after corn, and we really intensified that this year. We still have quite a bit of soybean data that's still out. Okay, but what I wanted to do is give you a flavor for the wins. Okay, and what we're seeing geographically, starting over here in Maryland and then working our way west over into Minnesota, Iowa, and Kansas. So these are our partners up here, 1 through 8, the states. Then we have the program of Soltellus that we utilized, and then the yield advantage versus an untreated. Okay, so you're seeing a lot from about the low end of about 1.3 up to a high of 4.6. This right here, the average is right now about 2.5 bushel per acre yield gain. We do have some data that has been verbally communicated to us down south, farther south, what the map shows that are in the 5 to 7 bushel range. So we expect that eventually this yield gain to date performance will increase. And then we can calculate overall our win rate. It looks pretty good right now, but since we don't have all the data in, we haven't calculated a win rate yet. But what we're seeing in corn, we're seeing the same type of a trend in soybeans. And if you do the calculation of the yield and the commodity value of beans versus corn, they're almost identical in the ROI they're bringing to the grower. Which brings us to this. So we've done 2 years of research in corn, or 3 years in corn, 2 years in soybeans. We're proving the ROI. So we're also backing that up with a performance guarantee in these 2 crops. So bottom line is this: if you pay for Soltellus and you don't make at least twice that money out of yield increases, we will pay you back the amount for the acre that you put on of the Soltellus. So we're taking the risk out of the use of this product for the grower. As Nick said earlier, it's a tough economic situation that farmers are going through right now. We want to help out with that. And with the multiple value proposition we bring, with the yield, the ROI, all the agronomic advantages that we bring, we're taking the risk out of it monetarily. So why would not everybody be using this product and seeing what kind of value it would bring? So anything you want to add on that, Nick, on the performance guarantee?
I mean, to me, you summarized it about as beautifully as possible. I think, I look at it also all encompassing between both crops, right? And how do we do, getting out a little bit more this year? I mean, we were close to 250,000 acres applied and 95+% success rate, towards that performance guarantee. I mean, that fits really well with what you were saying, where, hey, 90% is a great benchmark for this type of product. And it's consistent. That's just it is, when we talk about those numbers, I mean, hey, we're showing that there's a lot of consistency here, regardless of application.
Absolutely.
But I will say something we really wanted to get into also in 25, and we're learning even more for 26, is we hear quite often, what's the preferred application? And to me, devil's in the details. I mean, there's so many variables at play here as far as how this can fit into an operation, when it could be maximized. There's often, right now, partners that are preferring a foliar play with it, thinking about the activation, the ability to coat, really wrap well around those leaves. There's a lot of activity I think that you can look at as far as how it can potentially work from that foliar perspective. But shoot, we've been very confident also from in-furrow and early applications too. So I love it, and yeah, appreciate you really recapping it, Nick. I think this was very, very well done on the corn and soybean side.
Yeah. A lot of work went into those charts. Okay, so we're going to kind of move around the horn of the country now, and we're going to kind of go rapid fire into some different crops. We have mentioned this irrigated alfalfa before, but I really want to hone in on one aspect of this, besides the yield. So what we did here, this is out in Montana, it's where I'm at right now. We made one application of Soltellus, 2 quarts after winter dormancy broke to about 3 to 5 inch regrowth on alfalfa. Okay, we made one application, but we tracked it through 2 cuttings of the alfalfa, and between those 2 cuttings, we saw a 12% increase in yield as far as tons per acre of dry harvested alfalfa. That's half the story. Okay. More alfalfa to feed, more alfalfa if you're selling, generally a good thing. We sampled this. I was involved in this trial. We sampled these bales. We sent it out to Dairyland Labs out in Jerome, Idaho. And what we got back was truly kind of stunning. Okay. In that we saw total digestible nutrients, relative feed value, relative feed quality, and milk per ton gains that this grower said in 30 years of growing alfalfa, he'd never seen an individual product make that kind of change, especially in RFQ values. So that's feed value, that's production for the animal, whether it's a milk cow or a beef cow. Okay. And that's huge to these growers. It's tremendous metrics. So we win twice, yield and quality. Okay. So there's a lot of potential for this. Alfalfa, at least in this case out here, seems to be a pretty responsive crop, just like corn is, just like soybeans is to this product. And so what we want to do is corroborate this going forward in other geographies, Midwest in particular, where we can generate some more data to corroborate this. But this is huge for the livestock producer. So I wanted to really focus in on that quality aspect of the alfalfa trial. Let's keep moving. Okay, so we're going to swing back southeast to Georgia peanuts. This is some of the expansion of crops that we did this year. We did 2 trials down in Quitman, Georgia, 2 different varieties, 2 different locations, planted different times. So we wanted to see if we could, again, do two trials that would show a similar trend, and we were able to do that. On peanuts, so if you go to your store and get your favorite type of peanuts, okay, these are called SMK, sound mature kernels. That's where the money is with peanuts. Okay. So we did 2 different treatments. We did this 2 quart per acre at planting, and then we did a 1 quart at planting, followed by a quart at the beginning of flowering of the peanuts. Okay. Both of these treatments generated quite a bit of response positively. We saw the peanut yield go up between 6 and almost 8%. The SMK, the money yield, between 7 and 10%. And overall, that ended up generating a net profit of $60 to almost $90 more an acre. So 6 to 9 X ROI from these two trials. Okay, so this is summarized against both trials. Hopefully, this is some data that those folks down in peanut country can take and run with. And we'll probably revisit this with additional studies maybe this next year as well. But this looks like another very responsive crop to Soltellus. Okay. All right. And if you can work your magic on removing these things, I would appreciate it. Again, you did such a good job before. So we're moving over to Texas, and we're going to talk about a couple of cotton trials. The first one that I have here, as far as a slide, is Texas irrigated cotton. So we did a trial with Ripple Ag Research down in San Angelo with cotton. It's really the seed yield is important, but seed yield, for the most part, if the grower can get enough seed yield to pay for ginning costs, they're generally happy. Sometimes they can get more than that, and there can be some income generation, but really it's about this lint yield. Okay. And so we did a 2-quart application V4 side dress. Why so late? They want to make sure they got a productive stand and that conditions look favorable. Then they'll start putting inputs into it. So that's why we did a V4 side dress. We also took a 1 quart at V4 side dress and came back with a quart at flower bud stage. All right. In this case, this split application actually gave us a little bit higher lint yield difference than the single shot up front. Okay, but the bottom line here is the profitability here on seed, and I'm going to talk about seed and lint, but for the majority, the lint yield is what drives the profitability here. So somewhere between 35 and plus $90 uh, net profit. Okay, after paying for the cost of the Soltellus. So we're seeing the same thing in irrigated cotton. Now, hot off the presses, not even to the point of having a slide, is some dry land data that Katie sent in. So this was done with Mayfield Ag and Quarterway Cotton down in Plainview, Texas. They did a quart behind the planter and followed with a quart at Matchhead Square. They got 158 pounds more per acre of lint, 280 pounds more pounds per acre of seed yield. Okay, so even though this was dry land, they got rain, and so there's actually a bigger profitability gain here. Dry land, irrigated, and Texas cotton that proved that this product's working in that crop as well. Okay. This is a little different. This is more West Coast stuff. So don't drop out on us because I think it shows we're willing to put this in other types of crops and see what we come up with. Okay. And so what's interesting in these 4 crops is that the ROI that we're generating is actually much higher than row crops. I think that has to do with the value of the crop and the fact that we have really differentially price this product more for row crops. So if you got a higher value crop and crops that they apply more and more applications in, they can handle a higher input cost, but also then they would generate more ROI. And that's why we're kind of seeing that. But I'm going to go through these pretty quick. So up in Yakima, Washington, Ron Britt and Associates, great contract researcher, great consulting entity. They went out and they actually put this through irrigation. So they went in and manipulated the irrigation system to be able to put replications in on hops. And so they did 2 quarts, 3 applications in season through the drip. They saw 6.4% increase in green hop cone yield. That's the money. That's what flavors the beer and adds aroma to the beer. Microbreweries are popping up all over this country. And we have proven that we can have a very positive effect on yield as well as ROI here. This ROI, $1,323 more gross income. By the time you pay for the Soltellus that we put out, 32 to 1 ROI. Seeing the same 32 to 1 ROI in processing tomatoes out in California. This was by Lang Research. Again, 2 quarts per acre, 3 applications through the drip. 8.87 tons per acre more of what they call red and breaker fruit. That's readily marketable fruit. They can market the green fruit too, but they have to gas it. All right. I didn't include that in here. The red and the yellow readily marketable fruit, 8.87 tons per acre more, 970 or $967 more gross income per acre. Again, 32 to 1 ROI in this specialty crop. I'm going to finish with two nut crops in California, which are huge. This is the only place in the country they grow these. All right. Very big contributors to California agriculture. Sawtooth Ag Research, Steve Dietz did both of these trials. Again, there were 3 applications, 2 quarts apiece under the canopy or as a soil drench in season at very specific timings. And we saw 6% more nut meat yield. So almonds, favorite bag of almonds, these nice pristine almonds, okay, that's nut meat yield. That's the money on almonds. So 6% more nut meat yield, $370 more gross profit per acre after paying for Soltellus 12 to 1 ROI. And pistachios, okay, with pistachios, you get this bag of pistachios. You notice that some of these are kind of split open. That's why you can never eat just one of these. You get piles of them afterwards because you like to crack that thing open. Certainly, if they want to shell them, you can eat those too. But this is what's addicting, and this is where the money is right here. Open nuts. So we did 3 applications here, 350 pounds more open nuts per acre, $755 more net profit per acre, $26 to 1 return on investment. So we have a fit in specialty crops. We're not going to move away from row crops. That is our bread and butter. That is where we started this business, where we will hang our hat in this business, but we cannot ignore where this can fit in these specialty crops. And we're going to continue to investigate some of these crops and expand that as we move forward. So I think that's the next slide we want to get into is talking a little bit about looking forward. And then I'll shut up and turn it over to Katie. So, proposed 2026 field trials. So, there's a couple things that are really important on here. We're going to continue to do, obviously, this Beck's PFR trial work in corn because we're greedy and stingy, and we want that designation of PFR preferred. But when it comes to corn and soybeans in year 2 or year 3 here coming up, we really want to utilize our partners and their customer base for those folks to generate the data they need on a localized level to support the product. And that's going to be different in Georgia or Alabama or Mississippi than it is in Ohio, and different than it is in Iowa or Nebraska, or certainly in Katie's Kansas down there. So we want you to take the lead in basically generating the data that you need to sell the product. We're going to continue to revisit alfalfa, cotton, and even potatoes. We did not fund potato work this year. We did in 24. We saw some interesting results there. So we want to generate more data on some of these higher value crops as well, like potatoes. The almonds, we did some grape work that looks interesting. We didn't showcase it here, but we're thinking the year 2 is where we may really pick up big yield gains. We saw some quality and some other things, but not so much the yield. So these are 2-year studies, and we want to continue these with our CROs for year 2. New row crop research, we want to get into oil crops. Now, I know soybeans is an oil crop, but this is an oil crop. That's what it's really used for. So we want to look at canola. We want to look at dry beans, peas, pulses. We want to look at sugar beets. I mean, you show an increase in sugar per acre, that's money. That's easy ROI. And there's a lot of applications in a crop like sugar beets that's made just like there is, as I mentioned earlier, with doing work in potatoes. So these are going to be like the next 3 row crops that we're going to expand into. And then specialty crop research, it just makes sense from what we're seeing in the nut crops and in hops to really get into fruit crops. So we're going to have a big push into citrus, doing some apple or apple work, and then either cherries and or peaches on stone fruit. And vegetables, we've done just a very little bit of vegetable work. We don't have a lot of those results in yet because of seasonality, but we want to look at lettuce, carrots, onions, other things as well. We cannot ignore, we're row crops, tree, nut, vine, vegetables. That's the next things we really want to delve into. So stay tuned. We're going to have more data. Like I said, more data is always better than less data. So we hope to have more. And then as we get closer to Commodity Classic season, we should have some newer, more updated charts than even what we shared today, and some additional data to help you guys sell. So with that, I'm going to turn it over, I believe, next to Katie, and we're going to move into some announcements and Q&A. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you guys. I'm sure we all are excited to see that data. We've been talking about it for a while, and so here we are with more to come too. And what I hope that what you can see is how consistently Soltellus is performing across over 26 crops across the US and beyond, and then just it's such a multifunctional tool to fit into your operation, and that's really key, right? So we want to get into Q&A, and so please make sure that you put it in the Q&A section versus the chat, just FYI. So I'm going to start here, and we'll get going. I do want to go ahead. Well, since we just finished on vegetable, I have a question here that says, if you're relying on a foliar application, what timing do you suggest on tomatoes?
I'm assuming I'm taking that. Okay, so a lot of these specialty crops and or more what I would call specialty row crops, if you look at the physiology of those, there's certain times, certainly around flowering, where you would want to have an application made to stimulate and adequately feed that crop so that it's going to maximize its yield. And that's kind of what was mimicked in the tomatoes. But you also, when they transplant a lot of the crops like that, you want to make sure that you're feeding it, and especially with that microbiome, you're stimulating that to help manage stress, get that crop off to, the most vigorous start it can, because that pays dividends through the year. So I would say if I had to pick two, it would be at transplant or post-transplant, because that's also going to tie into the chelation aspect because you would have applied fertilizer in there. And then I would say somewhere around the flowering stages of the crop so that you're stimulating and adequately feeding the fruit production would be the two that I would focus in on primarily.
Thank you. All right. Another question here. When it comes to customers with soil test of P1 and P2 and with a pH of 8.2, what kind of role could Soltellus play in this scenario, and when it's correlating with soils?
You want to handle that one, Niles?
Yeah, happy to talk about that one. So essentially, like in direct correlation to that pH and the question, and we were on the the thoughts on the pH and how much phosphorus we're gonna be freeing up, correct? So
Correct.
I was typing an answer on another one there. So essentially, when our soils are out of balance in that pH, right, that is when phosphorus tends to get locked up the most by specific nutrients, right? So higher pHs, calciums, aluminums are going to really tie up phosphorus, lower pHs, magnesium, things like that. So the more out of balance that pH is, the more opportunity for us to free up those nutrients and that phosphorus. So essentially, yeah, that would be a great fit for Soltellus into helping make that phosphorus more available. And you actually might see the higher end of that spectrum of what that availability could be in those more out of balance soils when we're talking about phosphorus specifically.
Okay, so to follow on to that. So the question is, do you think that we're seeing a higher yield response on corn rather than soybeans, just based on how corn needs more phosphorus early on, and that soybeans can be more efficient with phos? some thoughts on that.
I think that's plausible. Um,
Yeah. So I'd say, I mean, that's definitely plausible. That's definitely plausible. Also, we've been doing a lot of foliar on the soybeans as well. So, we're also kind of looking at two different modes of action out of our product, right? You're kind of comparing apples and oranges when we're talking about some of that, right? So, because we're really talking about that carbon source and some of that immediate microbiomes stimulation, right? When we're going foliar versus we haven't done a ton of the that 2x2 work and things like that on the soybeans, and where we have it's been tremendous. So like those data slides that we were showing before was encompassing of all applications, right? From foliar to 2x2 starter on soybeans, and so it was kind of it's also one of those things where you're kind of looking at two different modes of actions with how flexible this product is. A lot of times we can kind of tend to get lost in the weeds, and it's easy to compare apples and oranges. But that's one of the you're kind of looking at those two different modes of actions and how do we maximize that for that particular crop, right? So on the soybeans, what do we're trying to look for that immediate foliar action out of that carbon source, out of the free floating aspartic acid. How can we help increase our herbicide passes, or the value out of that herbicide pass and increase the efficacy of the herbicide pass? Also, what we've been noticing is less antagonism of that herbicide pass, greener crop, and less negative effects from a herbicide pass. Um, and so that's kind of what we've been seeing out of that. So, definitely plausible, but also kind of an apples and oranges application when you're talking about those two crops and how the the active ingredient and that mode of action works.
I would definitely also call
So
out.
am I on the wrong there? Or, yeah.
I was going to say, I would call out also, we've got some really fun new literature that we're putting out for the 2026 season. It is available on our website right now. We're happy to share it out as well if reach out to our team here that we've got up. But in there specifically this year, we've expanded just on a marketing sales sheet, and we're really trying to break down these modes of actions of corn and soybean. So depending on what application you're looking at, what crop you're looking at, where would it fit? How do we see, these different responses? To Niall's point, the chelation effect, nitrogen is also at play when we're looking at soybeans, right? And those are something that we know that Soltellus can impact very well too. So we're hearing a lot of partners that are starting to feel more confident actually about the soybean potential. So that obviously sets up for a pretty exciting season ahead, knowing corn's been so consistent for us.
I
and
think
there's one other thing on soybeans to keep in mind. They always say like August rains make soybeans. Stress mitigation later in the season. That foliar application, especially with like a fungicide, makes a whole lot of sense to me to help mitigate stress, along with the chelation and what the microbiome is able to help do to help finish those pods out.
Okay, so that flows into perfectly this next. So if you could recommend Nick Vandervoort an application. So you've heard us talking about okay, anything from in-furrow to foliar to running it through the pivot. I mean, so really it's about what works on your operation, what you're doing already to get a free ride in the field is really what it's about. But if you could recommend only one application scenario, would it be 2 quart up front, or would you say you split it? Some of your thoughts on that. We get asked this a lot.
Yeah, so you can obviously do it all up front, but there's a whole lot of season left at the back end of that. When this product begins to break down, it's not going to eventually be there. And I like split applications. Okay. If you look at the half-life of the product, it's 28 to about 40 days, and then it begins to break down after that. So half of it's gone at 28 to 40 days, depending on conditions. So if you look at that, and let's say you put a cord out in furrow at planting, and you come back, let's say 35, 40 days later, you're basically at herbicide timing or maybe sidedress timing on something like corn. But if you make a second application, and this is the length of the product's effective life, half-life, if you make a second application here, you know, that's going to extend that window of efficacy out into the reproductive phases. So if you're asking me, would I just do, if I could only do one thing, would I do 2 quarts in-furrow or would I split it? I would split it. I think you play to the strengths of the product and you mitigate stress later season. You're chelating throughout, better feeding the plant, and playing to the strengths of the product. You're muted.
Darn. Okay. Love it. Thank you. I was looking through these questions. Happens every time, at least to one of us, right? So let's increasing protein. Will you answer on the alfalfa about how much we increase the protein? And then there is a question about feed value testing and silage. And I don't know if we have that data back in yet, but we will be having some. But what did we see increasing the protein when it came to the alfalfa?
Yeah, so I would have to go back to the individual results from Dairyland Labs to find out because when they send you these, there's like this many parameters on this sheet that they measure. So I'd have to go back and look at that. The ones that I explained, the total digestible nutrients, the things that really are kind of benchmarks to the livestock producer, the TDN, the relative feed quality, the milk per ton. Those were the ones that really stood out as the money to growers of the hay crop, but also livestock producers. But I can certainly go back and look at that. Off the top of my head, I don't remember what protein did. There were several of them that did show increases, and protein may have been one of it. We can certainly
I
get.
do know protein was one of them. I'm looking at some of my notes here. I have almost a 2% increase of
Okay.
protein from talking about that this summer. So
Okay. All right. Good save. And then as far as crop as silage, we've done testing on that, sending that in. I don't think at least I haven't seen the results come back in yet for that, but we'll have that quality data at some point as well.
yes.
Like I said, there's a lot of data still coming in.
Yeah, there is for sure. Okay, could Soltellus improve nutrient uptake without increasing application rates of fertilizer? Do you feel like this technology can work across multiple soil types and fertilizers?
Now,
Yeah, that's definitely one of the things that we have been setting out to prove is that we can work in multiple soil types and fertilizers with the way Soltellus works and how the polymer works. We're actually creating a chemical reaction in the soil, so we're not dependent on what kind of biology is already there, things of that nature. So really, what we can really work in a lot of variable type soils and a lot of variable conditions. And yeah, I think we actually want to promote reducing some of these fertility applications where it makes sense. But we definitely are going to help make fertility more available and make more fertility efficient when it's going on with fertility. So whether you guys want to keep the same, whether it's reduce, that's going to be up to what program you're already running. But no, we're going to definitely improve that nutrient uptake. We've noticed that in all of our data, our tissue data, the plant data we have, along with other data we've done too. Some of that's on some of our previous webinars if you guys want to catch those as well. But yeah, we're definitely going to work across a multitude of soil conditions and and fertilizer types as well. We've got several partners that are blending us with multiple fertilizer types and fertilizer applications, along with just herbicide applications as well.
the reality of the market right now is people are going to try to cut fertilizer. We don't have to make that recommendation. They're going to do it. And so some of that money that you're saving from cutting some fertilizer, maybe you should reinvest that in a product like this that's going to help you give the maximal bang for the buck of the fertilizer you are paying for.
Absolutely. I think that's a great way to kind of wrap this. I mean, we have so many great questions, and please know that you can reach out to our team anytime. On behalf of our team, we want to personally thank you for joining, and we will be recording this and sharing it as well, because I know many of you had planned on joining and then something pops up, right? So, some of you know us, some of you may not, but we look forward to working with you. And it's vital that we have products that are working with nature and not against it, and helping put your needs first and what your different issues you're dealing with on the farm. And so we want to be your go-to partner on your farm. So I wanted to say thanks to Barb. She's our director of marketing, and she's running things behind the scenes. So thank you for that. And we're going to have another webinar in early spring, and then hopefully all of our data will be in, right? I do want to say, if you are going to be at Commodity Classic the end of February, make sure you stop by our booth and see us. And again, we appreciate you and look forward to working with you, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks all.
Great job. Bye.